You're listening to Season 2 of Beyond Insights, your go-to podcast for all things accounting, business, and technology. Unsure how to improve your leadership skills, or whether you're suited to being a leader to begin with? Looking for ways to build a stronger team or take better risks? Then stay tuned.
From cybersecurity, blockchain, and AI innovations to sustainability, employee retention, and work-life balance, we've got you covered.
We speak to knowledgeable and insightful guests from varied backgrounds, industries, and locations from all around the globe.
From this multiplicity of thought, we strive to find solutions to our most urgent business problems.
Whether you're a small business owner, an accountant, entrepreneur, or even a young professional looking to progress, this podcast is for you.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive right in and go beyond insights.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Insights. In case you don't know me, I'm Laurika Steenekamp, Head of Product Support at Syft Analytics. Today we are joined by Muhammed Ismail Bulbulia, a chartered accountant and the founder and editor of myCAhub, a one-man South African startup launched in 2021. If you're a Psycha member, they get your CPD sorted, and it's Muhammad's mission to make myCAhub the coolest place for chartered accountants to be. Let's go beyond insights. Hi Muhammad.
Hi Laurika.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really an honor and a privilege to have you on Beyond Insights. We're very excited about this podcast. I for one am.
It's so great to be here. An honor and a privilege is a lot. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I listen to your podcast a lot, Beyond Insights. So I'm so thrilled to be here. Thanks.
That's great. We're glad we have a listener in studio with us. It's lovely. So just to start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to actually launch myCAhub as a business.
Okay, cool. So I am a CASA. I love saying that.
Who doesn't?
Tell me about it, right? Getting here was not a clean audit. It was a roller coaster ride. So I'm very proud to be a chartered accountant. And I did my articles at Deloitte here in Joburg in financial services. And after finishing in auditing financial services, and after that, I really enjoyed corporate. I learned a lot. I decided I wanted to try my own thing. And that led me to, after articles, in a nutshell, starting myCAhub. It took double the time before the launch, a lot more money than I anticipated, but it's been worth it. I launched myCAhub in 2021. And again, if I thought articles and like studying was a roller coaster ride, this is 2.0. It's been a great journey. I've really enjoyed it. And myCAhub is my proudly South African startup.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we never have enough South African startups, right? We can never have enough. So it's so great to actually meet someone who has done it. So that's really cool. We work at a startup. But
I was just going to say, I'm in good company here.
Yes.
Syft Analytics is one of the South African startup success stories, recently. So that's awesome. I'm very privileged to be here.
No, it's lovely to have you. And before we go deeper into your entire journey starting myCAhub, what led you to print the best accounting merch that I've actually seen in my life?
Oh, thank you so much.
No.
So, yes, this is myCAhub merch. It's the coolest accounting merch that there's available. And, for me, I wanted to try think different. I like that Apple ad, Steve Jobs' whole think different. When it comes to accounting, people have a perception of accountants. I myself had a perception of accounting and accountants in varsity. And actually, I let that influence me so much that it led me to fail third year accounting because I just didn't want to be, involved with accounting until, I gave it a proper shot and I realized I don't have to be, held to what other people's opinions are. I can actually take accounting and make it my own, whether I want to do something, fun with merch. And I've also made, I was telling Alex, I used to make T-shirts in campus. I just used to use fabric paint. So this is a bit of a level up.
Yes, it really is.
And I'm, I just get to do what I wanted to do. And something different. So that's really the thing behind it. And people seem to like it.
Yeah, I love it. I think we don't have enough fun accounting things, right?
I agree, and accounting can be fun, and accountants are fun.
Accountants are fun. No one ever believes me when I say this.
I'm saying it too.
He's struggling with, okay, so we're two accountants both saying accountants are fun. We can't both be wrong, surely.
They have to believe it now.
And what is your favorite pun that you've had on a t-shirt?
It's so funny you're saying that. My favorite pun is actually the misstatement one.
That's the one I got.
Yes.
So I'm very excited.
Misstatement says it's immaterial. And I just like the layers to that pun because it's a lady, whose misstatement, and I was in audit, and I remember clearly the trivial threshold. It's just like layers. So.
It's just sitting there. It was waiting for you to put
exactly.
it on a t-shirt.
For years, exactly. So, yeah.
No, 100%. And then diving a little bit more into your journey, what do you think the biggest pain points was in this process, or creating more? Actually, let's start with the CPD. And I mean, Syft has made a lot of changes to it. What do you think the biggest pain points are in that new CPD process that they have?
Excellent. So if we're then moving into our discussion, about products and our product at myCAhub. So we do a lot at myCAhub, but our primary thing is creating software solutions for CAs. I'm a CA, we create software solutions for CAs. And our all-in-one CPD toolkit is like our creme de la creme solution. That's the one we're focusing on, and it helps make your compliance as easy as possible. And if we then jump into your question where, the whole point of this product and, coming up with it and developing it was trying to attend to the pain points that I had identified with the new CPD compliance process and the new CPD policy. And the story behind that is after I finished articles at the end of 2020, I didn't know actually what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to try my own thing, but I hadn't specifically nailed it down. So I was chilling at home, and I had sent in my registration to become a CA, and I was waiting for that to come back from Syft. And my dad is an optometrist, so he's been doing CPD for years, and he's always, he was always the admin aspect and the points. And so I was like, okay, I wonder what my CPD is. And then I went on Syft's website, and I noticed that they had amended the CPD policy entirely. Amended is actually not revolutionized, is a better term.
Yes.
They changed it completely, from hours-based to output-based, and you have to have a reflective plan. And there's definitely pros. I think there's a lot of thought that went into that. Also with that, my understanding or hypothesis was, and this was from my experience with corporate, articles, was that CAs and other professionals don't have time for admin. You're so busy doing stuff.
Because it's true, right?
But that was just, that was my hypothesis. Yeah. And just from my own experience, and this goes to, I guess what we'll speak about more in developing a product. But the first point is, identifying pain points from your own experience. And from me, just from reading through the requirements, and then my own experience in articles, knowing that people didn't have time to get to admin. And I thought that, in a nutshell, if I could put together a solution or a process that made this much easier, people would pay for that. People would pay to make things easier. That was the hypothesis behind that. So the main thing was saving time, I guess, when it came to compliance.
Yeah. I think we tend to forget that time is actually our only important commodity, right? That is what we have. We have time. And you tend to forget that you should have a charge out rate for your personal time as well. Like it sounds so bad, but you need to think about what it costs you to do something instead of paying for it. And some things we do for the joy of it, right? I'm going to knit a blanket for 7 years. It's going to be a very expensive blanket after the labor is in there. But you don't necessarily want to spend your blanket knitting time on doing your CPD, right? So if you can optimize that, you will be willing to pay for that service because someone took the pain out of it.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's, it's incredible. That's absolutely it. And I think I totally agree with you on, time is a limited commodity we have. We don't even know how much time we have. And so for me, to spend it on stuff, you have to decide what's worth it and what's valuable. You've put it so well. One of the lines I actually used in one of my advertising videos was, we save you time so you can spend it on what matters most to you. You know, whether it's knitting blankets. You're so right. So yes, I agree.
Yeah. And I think something that goes wrong in that process is we actually want to do the CPD. We want to learn. We want to be better. We just don't want to write down what we've done. But if it's not documented, it isn't done, right? So then you have that struggle.
What a brilliant point, because that again comes to, those pain points, right? Whereas actually people are developing. And, that's our view and approach at myCAhub too, that people are, if not to remain competitive, for your own development. Other people are working with AI, other people are, learning new things. You're doing a podcast here. Did you study this in varsity? Exactly. But you're expanding your skill set. Yeah. That's so cool, in practice. It's just, you're right. The gap then is the format that SAICA or a regulatory body would want to see, in an audit or in practice, documenting that. And that's where we come in. Again, that's that gap to make it easy, because it is a schlep for you to do that. It is a schlep for you to say, I hosted this podcast, and then to go and put it against the competency. And that's what we do at myCAhub. And actually, we've developed to do that. It's such a good point because, I think we'll speak about moving on the journey. When we started off, we didn't necessarily do that. It was through user feedback, and again, keeping a keen ear as to what people actually want. That helps you develop your product and make it better to give them, what they want, etc. Yeah.
You touched on user feedback just now. Did you have a clear vision for your product at the start? Has it evolved? How does the user feedback actually play into that?
What a brilliant question. It's a very important question for launching anything. Yeah. Because at the beginning, I did have a vision of, how I wanted the software, our toolkit to work. And actually, one of the tips I can give is, if you are in the process of developing your own software or even your own product, even if it's a physical product, writing things down on paper definitely helps. For me, it was drawing up wireframes. In software development, it's called wireframes, where it's like a sketch or outline of each page. Okay. And so I drew up the wireframes of how I wanted it to look and what I thought would work great. And that was 1.0, and it was good to do that. Like, you have to start somewhere. But the important thing was to then test it with user feedback from actual users, from people who would actually, and here's the thing, there's another crux, right? It's very tempting to get feedback from your family and friends, right?
But they're all like, we love Muhammed, your product is great as well, they struggle to...
Sure, exactly, you're not doing yourself any favors. And they're not even the final users, they're not accountants, they're gonna tell me, it's not that valuable. The best feedback you can get is from paying users, from people who are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and then to tell you, okay, I'm not happy. You must give me my money back, and this is why I'm not happy, or this is what, I like, and then to double down on that. And so with that, initially, I drew up wireframes, and one of the features I wanted to include was like a calendar that told you when your upcoming CPD events were that you booked, and then you built that, and it took long. And that was totally useless. I'll be totally honest. I thought the calendar was important. This was a lesson I learned from launching. I thought, but that was a feature that I totally projected onto my users. In actual practice, nobody was using the calendar because nobody cared about the calendar. What people did care about then, people like our Chrome extension, people like our article database. I then doubled down on that. That was the thing, to take user feedback, what people actually are using. And a lot of the times, this is just another tip, people may not actually tell you what they're using, right? You've got to deduct it or induce it. One of the words.
Yeah, one of those.
Deduce or induce it from the information. So if people are using this feature, they won't tell you I use this feature, but they're using this more than this. Then I would double down on that. Really, once something's working, double down on it until it stops working. then find something else. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. What can you tell us a little bit about the steps that you followed after that you've identified this as a problem now, and now you're going to create a product? You did the wireframes. You spoke about the challenges a little bit. What else helped you to validate the need for this product that you built?
That's a great question. I'll be honest, I got quite lucky in my journey. I didn't do it necessarily the traditional way, there's no real traditional way when it comes to like entrepreneurship. But the traditional way is to get like a landing page. You first put up a landing page and see if you collect email signatures of interested parties, and then you may even put a payment platform there, a payment page, so that people actually pay. And then people pay, and then you refund them, and you say, you know what, we're still in beta mode, but that's a clear indication that people would be willing to pay for those services. I didn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got quite lucky in because this was my first time doing it too. I mean, I studied accounting, right? Like, and I have some amateur skill at development, but it's very amateur. I'll be totally honest. I didn't study that stuff. Accounting was hard enough.
I'm not trying to become developers as well. I get you.
But from what I knew, I decided, like, you see, the other thing is I was committed to my idea, right, from the beginning. I was committed to see it through, no matter how much I had to pivot, right? And you probably will have to pivot. That's the whole point. Your initial hypothesis is probably not right? So you're probably going to have to pivot quite a bit. And to be able to do that, to be able to be small and agile and to test things out and to not spend tons of money, and invest yourself heavily in when you're testing is really important. So for me, I put together like a 1.0 solution, but I actually went full into like doing the development. And for the parts that I needed assistance with, I did hire external developers, professionals, especially for like the security, like take that seriously, especially since my clients are CAs, you have to take that seriously.
They have questions.
Definitely. So for me, I got lucky in the sense that I was able to put together a 1.0 solution and launch that like a working solution. But the honest truth is, and it was a good solution. I think it was a good solution. But anyway, obviously I'm going to say that. But I had to still change it a lot. And in fact, having launched the solution, I learned that launching is just like the first 10%. It's your whole life until you launch. And then once you launch, you've got to learn how to market, and to communicate the value and the effectiveness of your product. That's part of the product, and the feedback you get on that, you can also actually add to the aesthetic, or the user interface aspect of a product. Because, there's the base functionality, like does it do what it needs to do? And then how does it look, and how is the user interface, etc., which are two elements. Just to also another point on that, like I like aesthetic stuff. Like, I take aesthetics seriously. Just for me, that's important to me. So it was important from the beginning, but the functionality is more important.
Yes.
The functionality is more important. So if you're creating something, people will be willing to actually pay for an ugly looking solution if it does what it says it does. And then you can add the frills and thrills, a bit later. But yeah, so honestly, it's just a process. The first, the steps that I took was I drew it out. I contacted developers. That's another story, based on experience. I'll just be honest, like the best way, the way I evaluate a fair number of service providers is reviews.
100%.
Like Google and the internet has made it really easy for, like, that's great from the democratization, because you can just see how other people that may be in your situation would use this provider, and it gives you such a level of credibility. Well, if you're a provider or, when you're using someone's service. So I looked at a lot of reviews. Even dealing with developers like that in itself is its whole story. I know you guys have got but yours is all in-house at least, But it's all part of the journey. But in a nutshell, honestly, the first point I would say is identify a problem, and where you'd identify the problem is from your own life. The best way to identify a problem is from something you're familiar with, that you are experiencing trouble with, or that people around you keep on saying, like, this is an issue, that's like, if you keep your ears open for that, that's the first step. Then the second step is thinking, how can I address that? Because your solution to a problem may actually be to hire a guy to come do your CPD. It may not be practical. There's elements, so you can think through, but you should be as creative as possible. Another thing is you shouldn't limit yourself when thinking of these solutions. Try and think outside of the box, as outside of the box as you can. And then you can, trim it down in the next steps when speaking to people. Say, would this be feasible? If someone came and walked around with you and recorded your CPD, or that's not feasible, so what can we do to bridge that, to get to the core of what the problem actually is? And then just try and test. Yeah.
Try and test. Reiterate, right? Iterate. It's a word that I learned to use, because, we know what it means, but when you are in that space where you actually need a working solution, as you said, it doesn't need to be pretty, it needs to work initially. And then we'll make it pretty, we'll update. But how did you find the transition from the first minimum viable product to the platform it is today? How was that transition?
That's also a great question. When I initially had built it, or had the infrastructure in mind, I was quite lucky that when I spoke to the developers, I made it known that, like I said, I was committed, so that I wanted it, I anticipated the scale. Even though the scale, it took time, it takes time, but I anticipated, and I communicated that, so it was built with scale in mind. Okay. And so I actually, if I'm being honest, if there's not that drastic a cost between, building something that's just for 10 users or small, or something that could accommodate 1,000. And the cost is often not that big, especially when you're starting off. I would say perhaps err on the side of the scale, because if things start picking up and if things start going well, then you've got that infrastructure in place, which is actually what happened to me. So again, I don't know if it's luck or if it was, decent planning beforehand, but once things did start to pick up, it was actually all in place, and I'd worked through a lot of iterations and demos and speaking to people. I speak to a lot of CAs. I speak to hundreds of CAs, and but I think that's what you have to do, and so by speaking to people, I get to know what they want, and what they're looking for, and then I can build that, and then when it's there, then people say, oh, I was looking for something like this. And I was like, I know, you and 300 other people.
You mean this is why I built it, because I was also looking for this, right?
Sure. But now. Exactly, now. Yes. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I knew all of it at the beginning, because I didn't. I really didn't. Yeah.
No, of course not. But you developed this product because you had your own struggles with doing your CPD, right? So you saw the pain and you were like, there should be an easier way to do this, and then productized it. And I think it was Gary Player who said the more he practices, the luckier he gets. So I don't think luck is right. The more you practice, and people always think about overnight successes as if it happened overnight, but you don't see the 10 years and all the grafting going into that overnight success, right? So being ready for the overnight success when it does come, as you said, now you build the scale in when you can. I think it's super important. So very interesting feedback here.
Well, you nailed it on the head. That's exactly it. That's so true.
I'm intrigued, listening to what you say. What do you think your biggest mistakes were in this process? What unexpected lessons? Because when you start something, you always know that you're going to learn things, and you have an idea of the type of things you're going to learn, right? But what did you learn that you weren't expecting?
Great point. And I think it's all right to make mistakes as long as you learn from them. Because we don't know. You don't intentionally make a mistake.
That's
some people
true.
may, I don't know. Sometimes something's a bad idea and you still go ahead. I can think of some instances in my life, but not in my business. So, so with myCAhub, I think first the one was deciding on behalf of other people when it came to features. So doing what I wanted instead of what people said. That was a big lesson from the beginning that I did learn and that I have changed. and not doing what I want, what I insist must be right, or what I think the user wants, but giving the user what they want. If I think of another one, it was maybe just trying to being like afraid. This is a big lesson in my life that I've learned recently, but I've tried to implement, and that's like, when you operate from a place of fear, it's a terrible thing to live. It's a terrible way to approach life because you have such a scarcity mindset. You only see limited options, and you become very desperate. And I remember that in the beginning, in the first year, when I had nothing, when I was like cold calling accounting firms, trying to get to the owner and like, no, I want to speak about CPD, getting rejected like a lot, which was perfectly fine, which is, the whole process of learning. And I remember that, that to get over that and the lessons I learned from that and bringing it together today, like, where I am, like, I'll never be ungrateful for that, if I can just sum up in that way. And so, and what I also remember is to do things a bit outside the box. Sorry, just getting to that point of to not do things so traditionally. Because I had like this scarcity mindset, I thought maybe I have to like put an ad like this, do an ad in this way. What I thought worked, from other people's experience, but really leaning into my own authenticity and, who I am has really helped, in translating my vision and what I want for the business. And people have responded to that much better. So to not operate from a place of fear, to not operate from a place from a scarcity mindset, but rather from an abundance mindset, from, anything is possible. And I shouldn't, like, why not try? You never know what's going to hit. Like, I was speaking to, I think it was Alex also before, and Bronwyn, and you don't know what's going. Oh no, it was Bronwyn and Jody Lee about the podcast, and they were speaking about one episode that did really well, and you won't know which one does well unless you just keep putting them out.
So true.
So keep putting stuff out.
Oh, I like that. That is actually such a good tagline. Keep putting stuff out, right? We should all be doing that. But I think fear gets in the way quite often of good ideas, of good people, of change, right? So very, very important thing. And on that, on change, on not being afraid, what else in the accounting profession do you think is ripe for creating a product? What should we do next? Give us your best idea. We will run with it.
So what I think there's always opportunity where there's admin or time issues or compliance, right? With the accounting one, I think a big one is, and that's why a good place to look is always like changes in laws, right? Changes in regulations, like the beneficial ownership one. I know a lot of people don't like dealing with the fact that they have to do this beneficial ownership. And accounting firms have actually, realized that this is a service they can offer, to supplement their services and added it as a product. They have already done that. So there's one with that. Another one is like with the VAT increase now from the budget, a problem that I'm just spitballing is that, people are going to have to deal with the increase in VAT. And if there aren't solutions that already deal with that, people are complaining about it on LinkedIn. That's where, it's just coming out from. So just keep an eye on what people around you, if you're an accounting firm, what are your pain points? What are the pain points people around you are speaking about? The laws, regulations, compliance, always a good place to look because people need to do that because there's penalties, on the flip side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I made notes. And before we get into our rapid fire questions, which I always enjoy hearing, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice? I think this entire podcast you've been giving pro tips as we were going, but your biggest piece of advice for someone starting and doing their own thing, what would you tell them?
I would say just to go back, there's two pieces. The one is just get started. So you have to start. It's no good just talking about it and projecting. And, a product itself starts when you have something. So you must get started. And you must execute. You must do it through to the end until you have at least the MVP. Like really, you have to execute. And the second one is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. and don't give up, commit to it, commit to the process, and, and ask me for help. You're more than welcome to ask me for help. Ask others who have done it for help, and learn from them. So yeah, get started. Don't be afraid. Ask for help. And I promise you should see success.
I like that. Short and sweet. And then going on to our short and sweet section, what is the software that you can't live without? You're not allowed to say Syft. Something else.
It's going to be myCAhub, our CPD toolkit. I use it every day because I'm helping out, whether I'm doing demos or helping our users. And so, and it makes me money. So I really couldn't live without it.
That's a good one.
So I really couldn't live without it.
Fair. And the best book that you've read recently?
So that's a funny one. I read, it's going to sound very nerdy. I read an analysis of my favorite poem. That poem is called The Conference of the Birds.
Okay.
And it's a Persian poem, but there's some good translations. And I recommend you go read it. Go check it out, The Conference of the Birds. But yeah.
That's amazing. I'm going to go have a look out. Also, I love literature, so always nice to hear these type of things.
Great.
And your favorite podcast or the one you listen to most often?
Sure. So my favorite podcasts are the podcasts I've been on. So Beyond Insights is one. Another one is the Road to CA podcast by Alunga Madala.
Yes.
He's a fourth-year student at Tux,
Yes.
and he's got his own podcast. He's doing great things.
Yeah.
And The Truth Talk by Larith Chimu, also a great podcast.
Okay. Truth told. I'm making my notes. Things to go listen to. What is your biggest lesson that you've learned in your life?
The biggest lesson I've learned is to take a values-based approach. Any approach in life on your values. To do that, you first have to identify your values. It does take time. For me, my values are freedom and independence. But that really was the seed of me starting my own business. It wasn't for the money. Don't start your own business for the money.
Oh, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it takes time. And, you may, if you do it for that, I think you do it for the wrong reasons. But for me, it was freedom and independence. So I say this a lot, but a values-based approach, that's the best advice I can give anyone.
I love that. And then if the listeners haven't been listening, which is not the case, but let's say they haven't, what should their key takeaway be?
Don't be afraid and do what you want to do. Like, don't be afraid, and if you have a thought or an idea that you've been putting off, start it now. Don't put it off anymore. Time is limited. We spoke about time.
We did.
Start now. Execute now. Now is the time.
I love that. Now is the time. Perfect. And now is unfortunately also the time for us to end, Muhammed. You wrapped it up so nicely. But thank you so much for your time and for spending it with us here at Syft. We loved having you and we look forward to hopefully hosting you again in the future.
Only a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast. Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now. And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast. That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.